The diner was nearly empty that night when the door burst open, and a little boy stumbled in, barefoot, bruised, and crying so hard that everyone inside turned silent. His small hands trembled as he pressed them together, falling to his knees in front of a group of burly bikers who had been laughing moments before. The laughter stopped instantly. The boy's words cut through the smoky air like thunder. "Please, take me with you. I'll be good. Just don't send me back." The biggest biker, a man everyone feared, froze where he stood. His leather vest read Devil's Disciples. His name was Hank, a man who hadn't cried in 20 years. But in that moment, as he looked down at that trembling child, something inside him shattered. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that even the toughest hearts can be soft inside, please take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us share more stories that remind people what humanity truly means. The boy couldn't have been more than 8. His clothes were ripped, his knees bloodied, and his small face streaked with tears and dirt. He looked like he had run for miles. The bikers exchanged uncertain glances, unsure what to do. These were men used to roaring engines, not crying children. Hank crouched down, his voice gruff but surprisingly gentle, as he asked what happened. The boy could barely speak between sobs, only managing to whisper, "He's going to hurt me again." That one sentence silenced the entire diner. Hank felt a familiar rage burn in his chest, the same kind he used to feel when he was a kid, hiding under the table while his drunk father smashed bottles and shouted. He knew that kind of fear. He knew that voice. Hank looked at the boy's thin arms, covered with fading bruises that told a story too painful to imagine. He motioned for one of his brothers to grab a towel and a glass of water. The boy flinched when they moved too fast. Hank noticed it immediately and said, "Easy, son. No. One here's gonna hurt you." Slowly, the boy let him clean the blood from his face. The name tag on Hank's vest caught the boy's attention. It said Hank Bulldog Rivers. The boy whispered, "You look scary, but you're nice." For the first time in years, Hank smiled. Not the rough, forced kind he wore around his biker crew, but the kind that reached his eyes. "I used to be scary," he said quietly, "but maybe not tonight." The boy's name was Tommy. Between shaky breaths, he told them everything. His mother had died 2 years ago. Since then, he had lived with his stepfather, a man who treated him worse than a dog. Nights filled with yelling, broken bottles, and fists. Tonight had been the worst yet. When his stepfather came home drunk and angry, Tommy ran. He didn't know where he was going. He just ran until his legs couldn't carry him anymore. That's when he saw the diner lights and the bikers. Hank listened without interrupting, his jaw clenched. When Tommy said his stepfather's name, Hank's knuckles turned white against the table. He stood up, towering over everyone, and said in a low voice, "No kid should live scared." He turned to his crew and added, "We're not leaving him like this." That night, they took Tommy with them, not to scare him, but to keep him safe. They gave him clean clothes, food, and a warm place to sleep inside their clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but to Tommy, it felt like heaven. He ate 3 full plates of food before finally falling asleep on an old leather couch, clutching a stuffed toy one of the biker's daughters had given him. As the night grew quieter, Hank sat in the corner, watching the boy sleep. Something in his heart stirred, a memory of his own son who had died years ago in an accident. He hadn't spoken of it in years. He had buried the pain under tattoos, whiskey, and road trips. But now this boy, this broken little soul, had reopened a wound he didn't even know was still bleeding. The next morning, the bikers gathered to decide what to do. Some said they should call the police. Others wanted to handle it their own way. But Hank knew they couldn't break the law again. They weren't those men anymore. At least he wasn't. They had a code now. "We do what's right," Hank said, "not what's easy." He took Tommy to the local sheriff's office. The boy trembled as they entered, clutching Hank's arm tightly. When the sheriff came out, Tommy froze. "That's him," the boy whispered, pointing toward a deputy in the corner. Hank's blood ran cold. The deputy was Tommy's stepfather. The air turned heavy. Hank stepped in front of the boy instinctively, his voice deep and calm. "You touch that kid again, you'll answer to me," he said. The deputy smirked. "You're a criminal, Rivers. You think anyone's going to believe you over an officer?" But the sheriff wasn't blind. He had known Hank for years, known his past and his efforts to change. He saw the fear in Tommy's eyes, the bruises, and the truth written all over his small face. "Deputy Cole," the sheriff said slowly, "you're suspended. We'll investigate this immediately." The deputy's smile vanished. He tried to protest, but the sheriff's voice boomed, "Get out of my station!" For the first time, Tommy saw someone stand up for him. He turned to Hank and whispered, "You really did arrest him." Hank grinned faintly. "Guess I did, kid." Over the next few weeks, the biker crew took turns watching over Tommy. They enrolled him in school, took him on rides at slow speeds with a helmet 2 sizes too big, and treated him like one of their own. The rough men who had once scared the town became his protectors, his family. Tommy began to laugh again. He started to draw pictures of motorcycles, calling them freedom machines. He told Hank he wanted to be a biker one day, but a good one, like you. Hank laughed so hard he cried. The men teased him about it for days, but he didn't care. For the first time in decades, Hank felt something close to peace. Months passed, and the case against the deputy grew stronger. Evidence surfaced, neighbors testified, and soon the man was behind bars. When Tommy heard the news, he ran to Hank's workshop and hugged him so tight it hurt. "You saved me," he whispered. Hank shook his head. "No, kid. You saved me." Because the truth was, Tommy had brought something back into Hank's life. Something he thought he had lost forever, hope. The boy's courage reminded him that even in the darkest places, there's still light waiting to be found. The bikers, once outcasts, had become heroes in their small town. People who once crossed the street to avoid them now waved when they rode by. On the anniversary of the night Tommy first stumbled into that diner, the bikers gathered again. This time, Tommy wore a tiny black leather vest with a patch that read, "Little Disciple." He stood on a chair, holding up a soda can as the others raised their beers. "To family," he shouted, grinning from ear to ear. The men roared their approval. Later that night, Hank sat outside by the fire, staring at the stars. Tommy curled up beside him, resting his head on Hank's arm. "Do you think my mom can see me?" the boy asked softly. Hank's eyes glistened as he nodded. "Yeah, buddy. I think she's real proud of you." Tommy smiled sleepily. "And of you too," he said before drifting off to sleep. For a long time, Hank sat there in silence, watching the flames dance and listening to the boy's soft breathing. He thought about the road he had traveled, the mistakes, the loneliness, the guilt, and how all of it had led to this moment. He realized that maybe redemption doesn't come in grand gestures or perfect lives. Maybe it comes when a broken man opens his heart to a broken child, and together they start to heal. Months turned into years. Tommy grew stronger, happier, and full of dreams. He stayed with Hank permanently after the court granted custody. The biker who once feared being called a father now wore the title with pride. Every Sunday, they rode out to the same diner where it all began. Hank on his Harley, Tommy on the small dirt bike Hank built for him. People would stop and stare, some recognizing the once feared leader of the devil's disciples and the boy who had begged to be taken away. Now they were father and son in every way that mattered, and every time they stopped by that diner, Hank would glance at the door, remembering that night, that desperate cry for help, and whisper a silent prayer of gratitude. Because sometimes, the people who come into our lives needing saving are the ones who save us the most. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of love, hope, and second chances. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe that even the toughest people can have the kindest hearts? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't the bikers who saved the boy. It was the boy who reminded them all what it truly means to be human.